There are two ways to create something to sell. The first is why business owners get rich. The second is the reason artists die penniless while creating most of the long-term wealth on the planet Earth. If you're struggling, this will teach you how to succeed. And if you're already making money, knowing how this works will make you a leader in your industry and an unstoppable economic force. My name is Josh Terry, and I help people who move billions of dollars and billions of views make better decisions. And the first way to create something to sell is to analyze first and create second. This is the method and default mode of someone who is more interested in making money than in making things, because it's more dependable. This is described in business language as analyzing a target market, coming up with a customer avatar, solving a problem for that avatar, and then selling the solution to that avatar as a product or service in a language that avatar specifically can understand. And described in regular English as analyzing a group of people, coming up with an imaginary person with a specific set of personality traits and life circumstances, solving a problem for that person, and then convincing people with similar problems and traits to buy that solution, using reasons and words that make sense to people like that. That's the analyze first, create second method. At this point in the video, all of the business owners are nodding their heads and the artists have fallen asleep. Because this is science, not art. It's not based in creativity, it's based in analysis. I'm not saying you won't use creative thought at some point in this process, but the creativity comes after the analysis has channeled your creative juice into a tiny box of the solution you're coming up with to solve the problem of the imaginary person you're trying to help. This is how you make money. And it's very important that you understand this. An entrepreneur uses his creativity during this process by trying to solve the specific problem he needs to solve through experimentation. The creativity is measured, put in petri dishes and pie charts with labels, and run through the scientific method of trial and error until the solution is found. Then that solution is sold after a careful study of the language the avatar understands and sold in that language. It's like a militant form of empathy. Every aspect of the person being sold to must be understood so that their needs can be met with precision. And if you're artistically or creatively inclined, the most likely reason why you're not making money is because you're not willing to put your creativity in this box. You likely find the whole world inspiring and aren't willing to look away from the broad variety of magical things you come up with every day, to concentrate on a specific person with a specific problem and then go through the repetitive process required to solve that problem many times in a row. It might be because you're unwilling to match your language to that person, or because you think your ideas are cooler than what other people really want. Or if you make the thing people will buy, then you won't be speaking with your authentic voice. You might even call this exact process being a sellout. Whatever story you have about it, if this method feels restrictive, then you're probably poor because you're unwilling to sell the thing people want to buy because it's not the thing you want to make. But no matter how you feel about it, the most predictable method for making money is to understand someone, use that understanding to make something they want to buy, and sell it to them using language they understand so that they can know that they want to buy it. The way most people do this is by analyzing other people and then creating based on the information they collect to build something other people want. This makes it possible to consistently create something other people will buy. But just as artists who are unwilling to do this get trapped into poverty by their stubbornness, there are also a set of traps that come from using this method. The people who only analyze first rarely reach their true creative potential. They fail to become leaders in their industry. And while they often create consistent success, they're rarely able to create a product that captures anyone's imagination. While artists are unwilling to limit themselves by using analysis to guide their work and struggle to create consistent solutions, entrepreneurs who use that method are at risk of limiting their creativity too much by only being willing to test within the parameters of their avatar. They rarely offer anything new to the world because when you create solutions based on data, you get solutions derived from the data. Or, in simpler terms, when you study a group of people and use their complaints and ideas to solve a problem, you usually get a solution that looks very familiar because it's built out of everything you learned from those people. It's better, but it's rarely new. Van Gogh's Starry Night didn't come from a randomized study of what Europe's royal art curators hoped to buy that year. Van Gogh made what he wanted to make and changed the world. And whether or not Newton's apple fell from the tree or Archimedes' bath resulted in him discovering the laws of fluid displacement, these legends point to the truth that a person must be open to random discovery to capture the magic of the world. Steve Jobs was the kind of person who tripped on acid and came up with cool ideas that inspired the world based on his ideas. He didn't ask people to vote on what new product they'd like to buy. He had a vision for the future and then led the world toward that vision. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony is such a logically structured and beautiful piece of music that we study it to this day. But it was made by a brilliant, grumpy, lead-poisoned mind who used bird songs for inspiration and scratched out the music he thought people needed to hear. By the end of his life, people thought he was crazy, and only played his music out of respect for his legacy because he'd gone so far. It took centuries of analysis before people actually understood what he'd done. Yes, Beethoven studied music, and Van Gogh studied art. They practiced and worked hard, but they were more focused on their outputs than their inputs. They didn't busy themselves with learning all of the latest on color or music theory, the input of new information, and they didn't spend their time explaining why they did what they did. They focused on the output of cool things. We discovered the brilliant logic behind what they did later, to the point that any skilled composer today can write a piece of music for hire that sounds like Beethoven, because it's been analyzed. There's a phrase from the art world known as theory follows practice. This phrase is meant to explain the idea that textbooks don't come first. Discoveries do. And people making cool things are too busy to write down the science or methodology behind what they're doing. They just do it. People then study it so that it can be replicated. And products are then created and sold based on the knowledge that comes from that study. If you're an entrepreneur and you're successful, but you're not leading in your industry, then you're probably missing some of the magic. Because it's one thing to live by the book, it's another thing entirely to write the book. And if you want to reach your full potential, eventually you need to step out of what you know into what you don't know, and start solving the problems you think need to be solved, not the ones of your avatar. Start deciding for yourself what is right and wrong. Start offering your own discoveries to the world and pointing in a direction no one else has pointed to say that you think we should go that way. If you want to be original, you need to write the book you think should be written, not the one that, based on the data, people seem to want. Because your mind is the one thing no one else has access to unless you offer it. So your conclusions have value. Your originality is your competitive advantage. This originality is tapped into by using the second method, which is to create first and analyze second. A very large percentage of the things on Earth that last come from people who are focused on making cool things. The tourism industry alone, to see the great masterworks of people who simply wanted to create the coolest castles and carve the best sculptures all over the course of history, is worth an absurd amount of money, trillions of dollars. Not to mention the thousands of shower moments where someone had an idea and then built it, and the random fixes and ideas the Industrial Revolution and Information Age were built on. The guy who made a light bulb didn't write textbooks on how light bulbs work. He had an idea. Yes, once he had the idea, he implemented systemization, and that's why it worked. But he didn't listen to people who said there wasn't enough electrical power to manage a city full of electric lights. He thought electric lights were cool, and people would want them enough to make it happen. Side note, people say the same thing about AI, which is absurd. The idea that our power grid will not be powerful enough to sustain a widespread artificial intelligence is a reason AI won't succeed is a hilarious misunderstanding of how human progress works. We didn't have enough electricity for light bulbs when we made them either. The theory will come later. First, people will just make stuff happen. And focusing on cool things, at the risk of making a stupidly obvious statement, is how you make cool things. So if you want to change the world with your ideas, capture the imagination, or become a leader in your industry, a part of you needs to forget about the structure and logic of what you already know works and go explore, play, and create something no one else has ever heard of before. Because this is where great things come from. The problem is that this type of creative process is very difficult to capture value from. The reason so many artists die poor is they spend their lives creating, and it takes 100 years past their lifetime to analyze their work and organize it into something that can be beneficial to society on a larger scale. The second method of creating something people want is to create first and analyze second. To make cool things and then figure out how they could be useful to society, who specifically might want them, and how to explain to those people why they should buy your cool thing. But the artist often doesn't even go through the analysis required to fit their creative output to a solution someone wants to pay for. Society often filters through the massive output of authors, inventors, musicians, or artists long after they're dead, discovers what is great or useful, and that thing becomes extremely valuable after someone takes the time to do the analysis. But no matter what, two things have to occur to provide something people want to buy: creativity and analysis. If you are only willing to do one or the other, you will never reach your true potential. But if you do both, you will become capable of making your creative visions come true and be rewarded for it with lots of money. You need to understand whether you need to spend more time on creativity or analysis. A fast way to know is if your work isn't selling, you're probably creating without analysis. If your work is selling but feels hollow or not reaching its potential, or you're not leading the industry, you're probably analyzing without creativity. Fix the one you're avoiding. Learn to combine them in a healthy balance, and you will become a creative and financial titan of your own design. If you found this helpful, follow for more and go to apply.joshterryplays.com or click the link below to work with me personally to improve your strategy in business and life.